I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here with me, and we're very pleased to welcome Elliott Sperling, a professor at Indiana University at Bloomington, who made a very quick trip to China and did not mean to come back so soon, but we're very glad he's back with us in the United States. Professor, a very good evening to you. As I understand it, your trip to China was meant to be much more involved. However, the Chinese turned you around and sent you away. What is your impression of why the Chinese rejected your friendly visit? Good evening to you.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on air. I visited China before many times on a tourist visa, and I've been involved in the Tibetan issue. I'm really an historian of Tibet, and so the things that I do with regard to Tibet's current situation, I generally class as good citizenship, not my main area of scholarship. But I've become friends with and very much interested in the case of certain aspects of the case of the Uyghurs through my friend Ilham Tohti, whom I've known about for some time, but I got to know him personally over the course of 2 years. And I believe that my writing in support of Ilham Tohti, who has been harassed by the government in China over the course of many years, crossed the line. They're willing to tolerate a certain amount of criticism on Tibet, given the global image of Tibet and the widespread interest in Tibet. But with the Uyghurs, there is no such constituency working in their favor, and they are consistently trying to link Uyghur discontents to Islamic terrorism.
So, Elliott, just to be clear, you got a visa from the PRC, People's Republic of China. You got it in Chicago. You get on the plane at Newark. You go to Beijing. They look at your visa and they say, "No way, Jose." So what they do is they put an X on it and send you back on the same plane to the United States, right?
Yeah, that's essentially it. And it became clear to me very early on that I was dealing with low-level people. A decision had been made elsewhere. My name was entered into a database, and there was no questioning it. In fact, I was not really asked questions about my beliefs or political positions or anything along those lines. Once they had seen what was against my name in the database, that was it. I was going back.
And so you got what you called the Communist Party of China Human Rights Award. Can you just let our audience know what that is?
Well, I'm being ironic, of course. I'm saying that by canceling my visa, they drew a big X in it. That constitutes the announcement that I have gotten a Human Rights Award from the Chinese Communist Party. In other words, my work, modest as it is, and is very, very modest, with regard to certain areas of human rights, has garnered enough attention that I have been put on a blacklist.
The puzzle here, can we be certain that it's entirely about the Uyghurs? Because you are a very careful student of Tibet, and Gordon has led me to understand that Tibet is also under a great deal of pressure. We know because of the self-immolations, but also because of the darkness, the news darkness over Tibet. So is there any indication that you were, by rejecting you, they were also rejecting that part of your study, Elliott?
Well, the scholarship that I do is largely historical, and the polemics and essays, and I say polemics in a good sense of the term, that I write about Tibet, I often consider good citizenship. But I am critical of the People's Republic of China, but I've also been critical of the Tibetan exile establishment, although there is no moral equivalency between the two. I have to make that clear. But nevertheless, I try to be objective and critical. There's more leeway for Tibet because there is such a larger constituency for Tibet. And indeed, within the People's Republic of China, the field of Tibetan studies is something of a battleground as well, because China has its own Tibetologists and wants to be a part of shaping knowledge about Tibet. But for the Uyghurs, you don't have that. And it's sometimes very puzzling for me why there isn't more support for the Uyghurs and for their issues and their discontents among Islamic countries. Be that as it may, China does try to link discontents of the Uyghurs to Islamist terrorism. The regime, if I can put it this way, the party is constitutionally incapable of actually asking the question of what are we doing wrong? Why are people so dissatisfied with us? They just can't bring it to that, so they have to reformulate it as who has done this to us? And in that sense, Ilham Tohti has become a scapegoat. He's someone who has created a website. He's an academic, I should add. He's a professor of economics at Minzu University in Beijing. His website was one of the primary places to go for people who wanted to know what was going on right now in Uyghur and what these discontents are. 2009, you had a lot of repression. People disappeared, people killed. Ilham was asking the question, where are they? He is very much concerned with religious repression, with social repression, social marginalization, and economic marginalization. And people would go to him, and he's also a very charismatic teacher. And the irony of it is that he has never been an advocate of independence for Xinjiang, and yet they have fixed upon him as a scapegoat and attached to him very, very grave charges. And he's in prison facing a very, very bleak outlook.
Elliott, we just have a few more seconds. But
Sure.
Clearly, I think what your story tells us is that there is increasing repression, not only directed against academics in China, but also academics outside China. And you have now joined a list of people who have been denied entry into the People's Republic. So it seems like this government's becoming much more coercive.
Or at least it's trying to be coercive. I mean, essentially, some of the threats that China makes, which cause some people to moderate what they're saying to the point where it becomes meaningless, all of that is only effective if one is willing to be threatened. If one accepts being threatened, and I really don't accept that.
Professor, have you heard from the United States State Department or the embassy in Beijing about this extraordinary and I'd have to say aggression towards an American citizen?
The contacts that I've had indicate that they find this to be something that, let me put it this way, it's not good. I don't know if and what sort of discussions may take place between the United States government and China on this issue, but I would be very, very curious to find out, especially with Secretary of State Kerry in Beijing at the moment.
How recently were you in China happily before this incident?
A year ago, and at that time I did see Ilham, who again, is a good friend.
So this is a surprise to you. It's a surprise, I'm going to presume, to the State Department. It might even be a surprise to the Beijing authorities. They're not all that well run. But certainly we thank Elliott Sperling. We're glad you're back with us, Professor. Elliott Sperling at Indiana University. A hero, Gordon.
Absolutely a hero. I wish I were rejected like he was. I mean, he's now got real status.
Thank you, Elliott. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. I'm John Batchelor.